million for a license. It indicates that if you are at a horse racing facility, if one is built, then you can bet there in those locations. It says that the Lottery Commission would establish rules and guidelines for all of this, make sure it's taken care of. It corrects part of the PCS. University of North Carolina at Charlotte was left off as one of the schools that would receive funds, so they are added. And I think those are the major provisions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Perry. Committee members, any questions about the amendment? Senator Adcock, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Perry, I'm looking at just a question, not questioning the intent of the amendment, but it says on page 21, line 11, by deleting $20,000, substituting $1 million. I'm not seeing any money referenced on line 11, page 21.
Senator Perry, would you like to be recognized, or would you like me to recognize staff?
Let's go with staff on that.
All right. Chair recognizes staff. Who's going to speak on this?
So I was trying to figure out what the fee was for, and that's quite a jump. So those are my questions, Erica.
It's page 21, line 11 of the committee substitute that was distributed last night.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you,
can she answer the question since I don't have that in front of me?
Chair recognizes Erica.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. It is the licensure fee for an ABW, parimutuel betting license.
Thank you.
Good, Senator Adcock?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions about the amendment? All right, we have a motion from Senator Perry. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. The bill is back before you as amended. Chair recognizes Senator Moffitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I am pinch hitting for my good colleagues in the House. I'm fairly familiar with this bill. I've spent the last 10 or 12 hours really studying the material and reading it line for line. And I could bore you with the summary for 27 pages of very comprehensive bill. Now, you do have your PCS summary at your location, and it does have the distributions in front of you. But the bill itself is a good bill. And when I take something on that's this complicated, I like to ask, why are we here? Well, in 1992, the U.S. Congress passed a bill that was the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. And what that did is it prohibited wagering on sports nationwide, on all sports. And in 2018, that was found to be unconstitutional. And since that time, 30 states have adopted some version of a sports wagering practice within their states, as well as the District of Columbia. So the bill before you is very similar to what the Senate had taken up last year. Senator Perry has offered to be a resource for historical reference. Some of the changes in this bill from the House version center on tax. We're increasing the tax from 14% to 18%. We're also eliminating the deduction for inducements. So the inducement would be when the platform is offering you, monies that you can place the bet without having to fund the bet in order to start wagering on the sports themselves. So they can still provide the inducement, but we're not allowing them to deduct that from their gross wagering revenue. We have added parimutuel, which Senator Perry just spoke to, which is regarding horse racing. So if you're not familiar with parimutuel, just think horse racing, win, first, second, and show. So you're pooling your money, and the winnings are distributed from the pool, and that's essentially what that is. Part of the amendment also discussed doing horse racing virtually, and that's also included in this bill. So as I looked at the bill, one of the things that I have found very interesting as a lawmaker is that we often lag behind what's happening in the real world. And when I looked at this issue, I found myself asking the same questions that folks probably asked in the early 1930s during the era of Prohibition. What are we going to do with our regulations when we have essentially banned something, but our folks are participating in that and ignoring the law? And that's where we are today. Betting on sports in our state is occurring. But in order for us to regulate it, in order for us to tax it and provide a public benefit from those taxes, we have to authorize it first. So this is not legalizing it in as much as it's taking place. This is just recognizing that this practice exists. It has existed since the beginning of time. It's increasing with access to smartphones and technology. And in order for us to actually regulate it and manage it in our state, this is what this bill does. It puts us in a position to where, by authorizing the practice, we have the opportunity to work with our folks in a very straightforward manner and regulate the folks that can actually provide the services, as well as those that can participate and manage this process moving forward. So I would be more than glad to answer any questions, but at the end of the day, this really speaks to us catching up to where we are, recognizing it, regulating it, and then taxing it for public benefit. I'd appreciate your support.
Thank you, Senator Moffitt. Chair opens for committee members' comments. Thank you, Senator Brett. Any comments? Okay. Senator Garrett?
Thank you. I have just a couple questions. Are we voting on this PCS today?
We are.
Okay. Since we just got it last night, there was an allocation in the distributions for gambling addiction. Is that still in there? Okay. And my other question, one of my larger concerns was how we were getting around the constitutional amendment that the people of North Carolina passed in, I think, 2018 to cap the tax rate at 7%. And I understand we called it a privilege tax, but it had deductions in there, so formula looked like an income, quasi-income tax calculation. Looking at this new language, it looks like the deductions have been eliminated. So is this at 18% on gross receipts without any deductions being allowed for?
Senator Garrett, I'm going to refer this question to staff. State your name so we'll know who you are.
Legislative analysis. So the tax reform was called gross wagering revenue, which is the total amount of wager received by interactive sports wagering operators minus the winnings paid out. So the only subtraction is the
Okay. All right. I will follow up for Senator Garrett with an ability for Senator Perry to respond to that. Okay. Senator Perry, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know about brilliant, but I do work on the tax issues. So gross gaming revenue is really the only dollars that are changing hands unless somebody wins. So effectively, there are no deductions from gross gaming revenue. It's a tax on that part they put up.
Senator Garrett, follow up?
One last follow-up.
Sure.
And this might be for staff. Do we have other privileged taxes in this state that exceed 7%? And have any of them been challenged since the constitutional amendment was put in place, if so?
Thank you, Senator Garrett. Staff? Any other questions from committee? All right, we're going to go to public comment. We do have a couple of people signed up. Sorry. All right, first up, we have John Rustin. We're going to do 2 minutes, Sergeant Barnes. We have John Rustin, if you'll just state your name and also who you represent.
That was not me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm John Rustin, President of the North Carolina Family Policy Council. If passed, House Bill 347 would impose a massive expansion of legalized gambling on North Carolina, as it would legalize state-sanctioned sports gambling on every computer, tablet, and mobile phone in the state. It would also flood our state, and especially our children and young adults, with ceaseless advertisements and promotions for gaming on amateur, electronic, collegiate, and professional sporting events, and as you've heard in the PCS, parimutuel wagering on horse racing as well. Decades of research clearly demonstrates the more prevalent gambling is, and the more forms of gambling that are legalized and advertised, the more citizens are going to gamble. Of those who do, a significant percentage, typically between 3 and 5%, will develop a pathological or problem gambling issue. Conservative estimates suggest that North Carolina can expect to see tens of thousands more of our state citizens and their families victimized by gambling addiction if this bill is enacted into law. Problem in pathological gambling manifests itself in increases in theft, embezzlement, job loss, personal bankruptcy, substance abuse, domestic violence, child abuse, divorce, and even suicide. This is the human cost of legalized gambling and gambling addiction. House Bill 347 would also degrade our state's rich heritage in collegiate, amateur, and professional sports, and would authorize our universities and colleges to enter into commercial agreements with state-sanctioned gambling bookies to get a cut of the gambling profits. With the passage of this bill, gambling will become the centerpiece of sports competition in North Carolina instead of the games, the sports themselves. Anybody who knows gambling understands the House is going to take its share and practically everybody else is going to lose. North Carolina should seek ways to make our citizens winners instead of losers. We ask that you oppose House Bill 347. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up, we have Reverend Mark Creech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name's Reverend Mark Creech, and I'm the Executive Director of the Christian Action League. Today, I wish to share with you, in the most basic way, what a bill of this nature contributes to our state's culture. And if you've already made up your mind in its favor, would you consider unmaking it for 2 minutes? The motivations for gambling are primarily religious, even somewhat magical. It affects the basic orientation of life. It appeals to the weakness and worst of what is in all of us. It characteristically promotes the easy come, easy go philosophy. It is an expression of recklessness. Gambling is not directed by reason or intelligence, but depends on feelings, emotion, and chance. Gambling, quite subtly, imperceptibly, produces a growing callousness to the interest in the well-being of others. We may hitch it to various noble and charitable causes, but at its core, the activity undermines service, stewardship, and a strong work ethic. And in place of these, it establishes luck and chance as a new set of values. All gambling fosters and awakens the spirit of covetousness when we have that inordinate desire to possess what belongs to others and we don't provide a fair exchange or give anything in return. These words, I suggest to you, are not for church, but also for here. Because when the government sanctions a policy that works to shape a society of nonchalance, recklessness, callousness, thoughtlessness, by undermining sacrifice, responsibility, exertion, perseverance, and toil, we are writing a bitter future for the generations that follow us. Mr. Chairman, may I have 5 seconds more?
Go ahead, Reverend Creech.
All the money in the world that we might gain from this bill, even whatever regulation it provides, can never replace the virtues that will be diminished because of its legalization.
Thank you, Reverend Creech. Next up, we have Mr. Matt Floyd. Just let us know where you're from, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Matt Floyd from People's Baptist Church, and I'm opposed to House Bill 347. Having pastored 3 churches, I've seen marriages and families ruined by gambling. The worst was in a town that had a casino in it. But with this bill, you're proposing to not just have a casino in their town, but to have one in their living room. And it will also add to the problem of credit card debts. Well, I believe that each of you got into politics to help people. and you work hard to do that every day. But this does not help people. The National Council on Problem Gambling conducted a review of more than 140 studies and reports and found that the rate of addiction is found to be at least twice as high with sports betting as with other gambling. I know your arguments that we're losing tens of millions of dollars in tax revenue that could go to help people, but remember that that money is coming from the people and often the most vulnerable. Remember that the love of money is the root of all evil. Our state constitution says that we are grateful to Almighty God, the sovereign ruler of nations, for preserving our nation and our liberties. And it says that we acknowledge our dependence upon Him for the continuation of those blessings. So don't depend on gambling for those blessings. I don't think any of you would want to trade the blessings of God for the evils that come with the love of money. So please prove this by voting no on Sports Gambling 347. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd. We'll go back to the committee. Any other committee members comment? I've got a motion from Senator Britt and Senator Britt moves for a favorable report to the PCS for House Bill 347 as amended to be rolled into a new PCS with a referral to finance, unfavorable to the original bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that concludes this committee. This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.